So tonight, we are continuing our series looking at the stories of some of the great women in the Bible. Last week, we talked about Miriam, and we looked at from a young age, she had leadership. We looked at how her relationship with God as a prophet, her relationship as a leader of the people, led her to be one of the three main leaders of the children of Israel during their time of wandering. And so before we get to our next person, we're going to need to fill in the story a little bit, because a lot happens between these two characters. So what happens? Well, a lot of wandering in the wilderness, basically. During this time, as we said, the people are led by Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. They are wandering around the Desert of Sin, the Sinai Peninsula. They receive the law, and they start the process of really becoming a people group. Prior to this, they're not really a unified people. They're very spread out. They're really only a people by convenience. Now they're starting to come together. Through this process, almost all of the first generation of people died. Nearly every person that left Egypt did not make it to the promised land. So that's Moses, Miriam, Aaron, all of that first generation. There's a couple people that did, and we'll talk about one of them today, but very, very few of them did make it. So when it comes time to enter into the promised land, the land that would become Israel, leadership falls to Joshua. Now, Joshua is very different than Moses. Moses was a cultural leader. Moses led the people in structure, in, you would say, government, in religion, in varying aspects of that. That's how he led the people. Joshua is a general. Joshua is your military leader. And so the way Joshua leads is through that strength. And as they enter into the land that will become Israel, they do so through a series of quick-hit blitzkrieg military strikes. And they're very effective because they go in, mostly at night, destroy, retreat, leave. And some of the early battles that they come across are against the Amorite kings. Two of the most famous were the battles against the king Sihon and the king of Og. Now, these two kings got demolished, like embarrassingly so, to the point that other people took notice. It was almost a, do you see what happened to them? Do you really want that to happen to you? Kind of thing. So these stories are getting disseminated out. So people are kind of taking notice of what is happening, of this group of people coming in, wreaking havoc in the land. Now the people now set their sights on Jericho. And this is a strategically good move. Jericho, because of its positioning, is an extremely important city. It is located at a convenience that will become what's known as the King's Highway, but it is at a natural location that whoever controls this high point, this city, really controls this entire area. And because of this, archaeologists argue, if you're a kind of Northwest Semitic archaeologist, you say Jericho. If you're an Egyptologist, you might say some other cities. Some of the Far Eastern archaeologists will say some of the cities over there. But Jericho is one of, if not the oldest continuous settlement. It is I think it's the oldest, but it is one of the oldest cities we have because of its location. So that's their next target. And it makes sense. But enter our next character, Rahab. So in Joshua 2, Joshua says we need to see what's going on inside the city. So we send some spies into the city to try to figure out what the defenses are, what numbers are. Just we need information because Jericho is a well-defended, bigly fortified city. So we're told that they go to the house of Rahab the prostitute, who lives in the outer walls of the city. Now, outer walls of the city, especially of Jericho, these are the remains of Bronze Age Jericho. This is the modern site of Tel Es Sultan. These walls, don't think of them like walls like we have here. They were basically rooms. You would have, think of like hotels, right? If you have a lot of hotels, they might have like a central courtyard, and if you see lining around, there's walls, but they're rooms. Think of it more like that. So you have this terraced system that some of the outermost walls were dwellings. Now, can you guess who lived there? Because if something's going to get destroyed, it's going to be the outer walls. So you don't want to have your elite living there, so that's where the poor lived. So the idea of living in the walls is accurate, makes sense. So Rahab, the biblical text calls her a prostitute. Some of the earliest Christian writings, especially Josephus, describe her as an innkeeper. So what is there a difference? What is going on here? Oftentimes, especially in the ancient world, the low-income inns and brothels were one and the same. Generally, the same person ran both. So it makes sense that, and those would be on the outer walls of the city. So it makes sense that if she was running the city brothel, it would be the low-income city inn where people would go. But it also makes sense why that was the first place the spies went. Because you first hear it, you're like, why are they going to the prostitute's house first? But if it's the city inn and brothel, that makes really, really good sense. Because that has been a military strategy forever. Ancient times. You want to get info on a city, you went to the brothel. All the way up even into Vietnam. Most of the intel the Viet Cong got from Vietnamese prostitutes. So that is a really good strategy. Go there, find information. So that's what they do. But people aren't dumb. The king sees what's going on in the city, or in the area, knows this army's around, knows, hey, I control the most important city in the area. They're probably coming. So it makes sense that they would have their own plants in the inns, in the brothels. So we are told that when the people come in, the king knows they're there. Instantly, the king knows the spies are in the city. So the king goes to Rahab and says, hey, there were spies there. What were they looking for? What did you tell them? Where are they? Rahab says, yes, they were here. I didn't know what they want. I didn't tell anything. They're gone now. They weren't gone. She had hidden them on the roof. They were still there. But she tells the king, they're gone. They went that way. And so the hunting party goes looking for them. So Rahab now is coming back to the people, or to the spies, but she has something else on her mind. She wants to cut a deal. When we pick this up in chapter 2, verse 9, this is Rahab talking. I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that dread has fallen on us, that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Sea of Reeds before you when you came out of Egypt. And when you and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, Shishon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven and on the earth below. So she knows what is happening. She knows that this army is coming in and they're going to wreak havoc. There's no stopping them. But what I think is fascinating is she knows the reason why. She knows, hey, your God, Adonai, is going to be the one that's going to do it. She knows it's not because of their size, because of Joshua's military prowess, because of anything they have. Because by the numbers, they shouldn't win. They really stand no chance by the number. But she knows, I saw what you did over there. And I know that your God is behind you. Now, this is big by itself, because if you remember, she is not a follower of Adonai, of Yahweh, of the God of Israel. Best guess is she was probably following one of the Canaanite pantheon at this point. That would have been their local city god. So she can see the God that is coming in with that group is way more powerful than the God that we say is in charge of this city. I want in on that. I want a promise of mercy. I want that God on my side. And so she continues. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you will in turn deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father, my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them. Deliver our lives from death. So she wants a promise of mercy. Because again, she can see what's coming and knows they don't stand a chance. I see who's behind you, and this city is about to fall. So since I protected you, do you think you and your God would protect me? The spies agree. And so she sends them out of the city through a window down the city on a rope. Now, this rope would go on to be the sign for her to not be destroyed. The spies told her, gather everyone into your house. Leave this rope hanging out, the rope that we descended on, and when we come and attack, we will not touch anyone in that house. If they're outside the house, they're fair game. We cannot be held accountable for anyone not inside this room when we attack. But we will promise you, if you are in this room, you will be safe. And that's what happens. We all know the story, that Joshua fit the battle of Jericho. They go around the city, they sing, the trumpets, all of that. The city falls. Everyone is killed. The city is destroyed. But Rahab and her family are spared. Now, this is the only narrative reference to Rahab. But if we jump to the New Testament, there are quite a few references, mentions of her. So the first comes right at the beginning of Matthew. Matthew starts with a genealogy. So-and-so was the father of so-and-so was the father of so-and-so, on and on and on. Interesting, in verse 5 of that, we read this. Salmon was the father of Boaz with Rahab. And scholarship is pretty much united that this Rahab is the Rahab from Joshua 2. Now, Salmon is an Israeli name, and what's more, seems to be associated with the tribe of Benjamin. Meaning, not only was her family spared, but she became part of the society. She was adopted, brought into the children of Israel. She married someone from the tribe of Benjamin. She is fully integrated into this society. Now, is there another name on here that sounds familiar, rings a bell? Ever heard of the name of Boaz? Boaz is the second husband of Ruth, a name which, spoiler, we're definitely going to talk about later. So Ruth was the Moabite woman who marries, I don't remember if it's Mahlon or Chilion, one of the kids, but they both die. She comes back with Ruth, her mother-in-law, or comes back with Naomi, her mother-in-law, to Israel, and gets remarried. She remarries Boaz. Boaz is the daughter of Rahab. Or is the son of Rahab. Sorry, you knew what I meant. Is the son of Rahab. Boaz goes on to be the father of so-and-so, father of so-and-so, father of Joseph, of Jesus. So Rahab is in the lineage of Jesus. Rahab is a descendant, Jesus is a direct descendant of Rahab. Not only so, but this genealogy specifically calls it out, because there are not many women called out in this genealogy. Rahab is one of them. The next mention of Rahab we have, the next two come from some of the epistles. So Hebrews 11, which is sometimes called the Hall of Great Faith. It is a section that goes through some of the biggest Old Testament figures and talks about their stories of faith. So it walks through Abraham, tells some of the great things Abraham did by faith. It talks about Isaac, the things Isaac did by faith. It goes to Jacob, goes to Moses, and then we get verse 31. By faith, Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace. This is massive company. When you think of the halls of faith, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab are the five mentioned. The only five mentioned in this section. The idea of great faith. She's included with these five, what we would call the four kind of stalwarts of Israel and Rahab. But it goes on. We jump to James. In James, specifically chapter 2, again, they're talking about faith and actions. In this section, this book is getting at the idea that if you have true, genuine faith, this will spur you on to actions. Now, this is not getting at the idea that actions are what save you, are what gives you faith. That is not what it's saying. It's talking about that these actions will bubble up out of you when you have these true, genuine faith. You won't be able to help yourself when you have this true, genuine faith. And this section starts by talking about Abraham. And it talks about the faith that Abraham showed when him and Isaac go to the mountain. And it talks about the faith that Abraham had to have to potentially kill his son. Now, did Abraham have faith that God would not let him do it? Or was it that Abraham had faith that God would bring him back? Whatever it was, Abraham was willing to do this in faith in God. And then the other person that they talk about in verse 25 is Rahab. Likewise, was not Rahab the prostitute also justified by works when she welcomed the messengers and sent them out by another road? Again, this is massive company. When talking about faith, Abraham, we always think of. But how often do we think about Rahab? Especially in the idea of faith and works. This is reminding us that not only did Rahab see the people of Israel coming, recognize what was behind them, who was behind them, God, Adonai, the God of Israel, but she took actions. She didn't just sit and be like, wow, they're going to beat us. She let that inspire action. And her action was, I want to be aligned with that God. I want that God on my side. And she did what it took to do that. So I just love that idea of when talking about who were the two characters the book of James looks at as defining people of works, of letting their faith direct their actions. It's Abraham and Rahab. Now, Ken, could I ask you to go up and turn the feed off again? Excellent. So are you up here? Oh, Nick's up there. He's going to do it right now. All right, online people, we're going to go to questions now. So we will see you all next week.